moment, because it is this notion that men are bound up with death that undermines, and I think really men who are males of our race who should be behaving like men are troubled by this idea that we are bound up with death, that's our romance, because it's a gruesome thing. I mean, out of a specific context where I said you have to have this great explication, etc. It is absolutely immoral. It is not a wonderful thing to murder someone. It is totally immoral to murder, and we absolutely reject violence, or that anything good would come from any violence. At the same time, we promise that we will always defend ourselves, but we reject all violence. So I'm gonna free you and everyone here in just a moment. What I see is this idea that men are bound up with death. I see this as a notion that is looking past the sun for the moon. You're looking at, when we focus on the death aspect as the core of what it means to be a man, the core of manhood, we're looking to one artifact, in this case, my analogy, the moon. And we're looking right past the sun, the source of the light on the moon. If the analogy makes sense for people. Now, I'm going to go ahead and grant to Ash and Mamir's Bruner, Phil, that perhaps we're saying the exact same thing, and this is a matter of perspective. So perhaps we're looking at the exact same thing. Human fallibility is potentially at play here. We're saying the same thing, different perspectives. But even if we have different perspectives, I'm arguing that this perspective is superior to the perspective that we're bound up with death. Far superior. This is the way I live my life. This is one of the ways that drives me and ignites the flame in my heart. And I argue that all white males who behave like men are ultimately behaving and understanding this concept without being able to, behaving in accord with and understanding this concept without being able to articulate it exactly as I will for you all in just a moment. The first thing that I see as a problem with this idea, or I guess the second thing now, that I see as a problem with this idea that manhood, the core of manhood, is death, is that it doesn't explain the other acts of what it means to be a man in our lives, like impregnating a woman. If the core of manhood is bound up with death, then how do you explain impregnating a woman being something that a man wants to do, and the outcome of that explaining what a man wants to do? Again, it's going to take extra explanation. How about doing the right thing when the wrong thing would benefit him? Again, if death is at the core of manhood, which actually, the more we talk about it and the more we focus on it, it just seems increasingly sleazy, increasingly gross, increasingly ignoble. The more we focus on it, the worse it looks. So that's why I decided that the defining element which separates males from men, boys from men, and absolutely fundamentally separates women from men. Because when you think about death and killing, would a woman kill? Yes. Women murder, women kill. If someone's going to, if a carjacker is going to run off with a woman's child in the car seat and she shoots him dead before he can do that, she's also a killer at that point, not a murderer, because it was just. But that's not the killing, the death is not the point. The difference is that I see that fundamentally separates men from boys, men from males, and definitely men from women is glory. There is something in every man. Some of us begin to feel it as boys. As we begin to transition, we begin to get a little older, and perhaps we can say that that moment when a boy feels this sentiment inside him that I'm going to define in one moment, that's the moment he's become a man. So it is this desire to strive for something that is ineffable and beyond him. It is genetic, it is spiritual. It is the reason why I am sure we are still here today, because there are men that felt that the drive for glory, specifically the glory in the defense of their people, was the preeminent thing, the greatest thing that they could do for their people, the greatest thing that they could do with their life would be to go out into conflict, to strive for glory. And the more likely death in the midst of struggling for glory, the more shining that glory. That is what is at the core of manhood. How many times, and I'm talking to you men out there, I've seen it dozens of times. How many times have you felt it or seen it? That it's been that someone has been recounting a story of some heroic battle where men are dying left and right, perhaps where the cause is hopeless, like Leonidas and the 300 Spartans, and you longed to be there in that moment. If you felt that, you're a man. If you felt in your heart great joy at the prospect of joining your brothers in conflict, sacrificing yourself, potentially death, for your people, struggling shoulder to shoulder with death and gore all around you, likely as not to never return home, if you felt joy in your heart and tears welled in your eyes for that moment, you are a man. If you felt that at 10 years old, you're a man. If it took until you were 30, you're a man. In all my years of hearing these stories and being with groups of people, I have seen dozens of men, their eyes glisten, fill with tears, hearing about the bravery, hearing about the camaraderie, the moments of deepest passion, the moments of greatest pain, the moments of greatest glory. And I've seen tears stream down their cheeks for those moments. That is something truly magical. That is what's at the core of what it means to be a white man. Not death, but glory. You know what else I've noticed? When I've looked around the room at these telling of these stories, I have seen males who looked afraid. They weren't men. I've seen boys who have grabbed onto their mother's skirts. They weren't men yet. Hopefully they became men. And one of the most interesting things that I've never seen, and again, setting this apart as something that is only intrinsic to the white male, without saying that it doesn't hold true for non-whites, but we're talking about our people here, is that I have never in my life seen a woman tear up with joy at the thought of being able to give her life for her people in bloody combat. Not a single time. In fact, when I share, and this is going to Spartan Warrior Queen's statement a little earlier, when I share with people that one moment, and I'm going to ask you all out there, if you could live for one day, what would it be? What would you be doing? Where would you be? Who would you be with for that one day? I've asked this question many times of folks over the years. I was curious about the differences, what went through people's minds, differences between the sexes and the like. One of the things I always found was that When I was talking to men, there was always a struggle for glory when they talked about living one day. My one day, if I could have any day to live in all the history of the world, it would be with Leonidas and the Spartans. I know saying that I would die that day. I wouldn't be on some soft bed surrounded by sex partners. I wouldn't be a glutton feeding myself. I wouldn't want to sit with children and nieces and nephews, and as wonderful as that could be, I would want to be on that battlefield for that one day to strive for glory for my people, to give all that I had as a man. Why? Why do we do that? What is it inside of us, of white males, that make us yearn for such moments, that make our eyes fill with tears, that God willing we could have such a day? There is something in our spirit, ladies and gentlemen. We don't want to die on that battlefield, but God, if we do, what a glorious death that would be. And that is what we fight. That is why we fight. That is why we struggle. We fight for that ineffable master that has called upon us to lay down all that we have so that our people may continue. That is the glory at the core of what it means to be a man. Wholly alien to the boy and fundamentally alien to the woman. That is what differentiates us. And every time I have told our women that that would be the day I would live, I cannot tell you, it has been unanimously inscrutable faces. Why in the world? That demonstrates that it is incomprehensible. It doesn't exist in women. The desire to fight for an ineffable master beyond us that holds aloft this thing called glory, the sacrifice of all of who and what you are for a moment to give your life for something that beautiful, is incomprehensible, only academically comprehensible. That is the big difference. That is what I see as at the core of manhood. And ladies and gentlemen, when you view manhood, the core of manhood, as glory, you then can understand how all of the other acts that we say are the acts of a man make sense. Whereas death does not make sense and is quite dangerous. We can talk about that as well. You understand how a man impregnates a woman so that he can hold his children on his shoulders. Because that is in keeping, giving that life is in a small way in keeping with that moment of ultimate glory, of the ability to lay one's life down for one's people. You can understand why a man decides to do the right thing instead of the wrong thing when the wrong thing will benefit him. Because that, again, in a small way, is the striving for glory. Again, on the macro scale, the laying down of one's life for one's people, if that's what it results in. And the more glorious, the more shining that glory. If it is a battle like it was for the Spartans, when it was known there was no hope for victory. That glory, ladies and gentlemen, is what explains all of the other behavior or behaviors and acts of a man. It explains the acts of my father. It explains the acts of your fathers, those of you who were lucky enough to have men as fathers rather than boys as fathers or males as fathers or no fathers at all. And it is what you and I men out there, boys out there, males out there, are going to have to embrace if we are going to save our people. And here's the reason why. I have a note here I've got to mention. How absurd does it sound to all of you to think about a woman having tears stream down her face because her heart sings at the prospect of reaching for eternity in glory in combat, where she knows she's going to be cut to pieces? Never. It is the most absurd notion. It is not death, it is glory. Now, what I'll say about women is this. A female becomes a woman when she embraces her core identity as a woman. But their core identity is a completely different focus from that of a man's. The difference between man and woman in this respect, both absolutely essential for the existence of our people, is not life and death. It's inward looking and outward looking. The woman ensures our survival as a people by looking inward into the production of life, into the children, whether she has children or not, by looking inward. The man ensures our survival by looking outward, by striving for glory, that ineffable glory beyond all things. Here's the problem today. The problem today is that we have matriarchal societies. So women control men, absolutely. And a woman looks inward toward her womb to ensure the survival of our people. So when it comes to the man doing his job, the woman says, no, you need to serve me and my focus, which is inward. And because we have a matriarchal society, he says, how high shall I jump? What hoop shall I jump through? Rather than saying what he should say, which is, sugar, I'm going to be a man and you're going to have to deal with it. And he's going to head out the door to defend our people. That is what you have to do if you're a male and you want to be a man. I told Jared, George, and Ash in the audience on the stream the other day, the TAP stream, about how I have gone for years now. I've been in the cause for white well-being. And I have come across man after man after man who said they weren't allowed to participate because their wife said no, because their mother said no, because their sister said no, because their girlfriend said no, and one occasion where a guy said his daughter said no. These women were not doing anything wrong by saying no. They were serving the core of their being. They are absolutely in tune with the core of their being. I'm not saying that women are perfect. In this behavior, in this instinct, they are serving the core of their being, the inward looking toward their womb for the survival of our people. The males are failing to serve their being. They are failing to say, no, I'm going to do what I have to do as a man, and then walk out the door to do your duty. That is what continues to undermine and hamper us, and has for a great many decades now. And if we continue to allow ourselves, males out there, guys out there, if you continue to allow yourself to be a boy, bossed around by your mother, sister, wife, girlfriend, or daughter, we won't be able to save our people. I'm not even going to bother trying to ask the ladies to not serve the core of who and what you are by beseeching the men in your lives to not go out to battle, And the battle today is not a battle of killing and dying on a battlefield. The battle today is oratorical. Yes, it is information warfare. Yes, the reputation could get assassinated. Yes, the anti-whites might say mean things about you, and your community might ostracize you. And being ostracized, it lights up the exact same pain receptors as physical pain. I understand all of that. I'm not trying to get you to reject what is natural and normal for you. I want our women to continue to uphold the core of their being so that we can survive as a people. But now more than ever, I want our men to say to our women, no, I will not serve your inward looking core. I will instead strive for glory for our people and do my duty as a man. That more than anything is what we need right now. That is what all of those men should have been saying over all of these years, me trying to get them to come out to meetings. That is why so many of the young men today who come out and pass out leaflets, who come out and attend these symposiums when we know the anti-whites are going to show up. That's why so many of them either don't have girlfriends or they keep them secret. You're not allowed to know if they have them or not, because they are mustering up the courage to be a man and say, no, I'm going to do this, whether you like it or not, whether it serves your immediate inward-looking interest or not. That is what we have to do, all of us. That is what it means to be a man. So I want to see